So research that explored the benefits of gender diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And definitely a big part of that was specifically on the inclusion aspect. So what is the value of gender diversity and inclusion in organizations? And what are the outcomes for the organizations who implement gender diversity and inclusion? So it was primarily a theoretical review of the available literature and research regarding gender diversity and inclusion. So they provided an overview of diversity and inclusion and the overall benefits it has to organizations across the board, which we know are many. Why gender diversity and inclusion specifically is of value to organizations. They also discussed a table of organizations and had real-time feedback of their reasons for and results of implementing gender diversity and inclusion. They talked about where there are gaps around the world in achieving gender diversity and inclusion. And they discussed specifically Indian organizations. That was a focus of this. And then the reasons why gender diversity and inclusion should rank as a top priority for organizations. So the results showed that gender diversity and inclusion are shown to greatly enhance an organization in a myriad of ways. This includes innovation, productivity, profits, performance, virtually every aspect of the positive benefits that an organization should have. Additionally, it's becoming crucial for organizations to have a strong commitment to gender diversity and inclusion to attain a competitive pool of candidates and employees. There are some gaps around the world where it is not yet a top priority, but as things continue shifting, it is creating it to be a high priority item, and for the good reason of creating even better businesses, and of course also recognizing the values and contributions that people have from all different backgrounds and identities. So the key takeaway is that gender diversity and inclusion is of utmost importance to organizations, and it does create many benefits for them, and is a trend in the focus of social justice. The research shows that gender diversity and inclusion matters to employees when searching for a workplace, and thus allows for organizations to achieve that competitive candidate pool, which inherently will benefit the organization. And so the article is really good in the sense that it does give a lot of percentages in the ways that women specifically contribute to the workplace versus some places where there are not a lot of women. And so, of course, gender diversity and inclusion can span a lot. In this case, they were specifically focusing more on women. And so they talked about women CEOs and the type of profits that they can bring in and the ways that they've contributed and things like that. But the percentages were really interesting to read about how they can help bring in all those benefits.
I like how they included inclusion, because diversity without inclusion is essentially can lead to negative outcomes, essentially. So important to have these two things together.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the focuses, was where just because you have, I guess, a variation of gender diversity did not inherently bring in the same benefits as when it was inclusive and you saw women in leadership roles and things like that. So they did focus very specifically on that point, that it's important to have the inclusion.
Yeah. I think it speaks to like some of these initiatives that companies have, and they're just kind of, I think sometimes it's kind of like a superficial position or a superficial agenda of just like, let's create more diversity, but they don't actually have a plan in place to create more inclusivity once the diversity is attained. So what are you going to do with a diverse workforce? How are you going to include different perspectives once you create that diverse workforce? And I think a lot of companies don't think about that.
And it was actually one of the things they talked about too was an aspect of that on benefits, which I thought was fascinating, that they talked about, and I think that was in their charts of like the organizations who have done this and what they found. And some of that was on looking at things like more flexibility in work schedules, paid paternity leave, things like that. And so that was a really interesting facet of that I like that they included, and the way that it can benefit everyone, across the board, but it's it inherently seemed to be impacted by the diversity and inclusion of women in the workforce.
Thank you for sharing, Natalie, about the data and the actual statistics that was incorporated in this study. Because when you were first, introducing this to us, I was thinking of, I don't know if it was last week or the week prior, there was a similar article, but kind of one of the key takeaways was that companies should start to gather more data on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And it's interesting to see that, you know, in this case, I understand that it was specifically focused on gender diversity and inclusion, but great to see that there's some data and statistics added.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and you can think of the ways that that might apply, you know, in overarching diversity and inclusion, you know, just how those different perspectives bring so much contribution to an organization.
Super important study, very much related to a lot of what we promote here. So yeah, absolutely. Very good. And I appreciate you kind of giving us the rundown on the some of the organizational benefits as well of the study of gender diversity and inclusion, because I feel like we have studies like this on a number of areas of diversity and inclusion, but it's interesting to see and good to see that that's promoted, and not too surprising, but that gender diversity inclusion specifically can lead to these myriad of benefits. So super interesting, really good takeaways.